Okay, now we're going to move on and talk about the next two parts of that pectoral girdle. One is the clavicle, and the other one is the humerus. Really, the pectoral girdle is made up of the scapula and the clavicle, but the head of the humerus kind of articulates in there. So we're going to start with the clavicle. Clavicle is super simple. Again, you just need to recognize whether you have a right or a left. But really, even with that, all you need to know is the fat end and the flat end. The flat end is called the acromial end, and this is what articulates with the acromial process on the scapula. The fat end is the sternal end, and that's what articulates with the sternal notch. This happens to be a left clavicle. And now we're going to move to the humerus. The humerus is a little tricky because, again, you have to recognize right and left and anterior and posterior surface. So the one trick is to recognize the smaller fossa is on the anterior surface and the larger fossa is on the posterior surface. The other thing to recognize is that this big thumb shape is pointing medially. So when you're in anatomical position, this is on the medial side. So when you're looking at this particular humerus, that this is a right humerus, and because this is the medial side, and so this is when we start, we're going to start from the top. This is the head of the humerus right here, the articulating surface, okay? And then when we look closer, you can see there is a groove right here. So this groove is the intertubercular groove, and next to that, on the lateral side, is the greater tubercle. On the medial side is the lesser tubercle. And then, like I said, in between is the greater tubercle groove. This area right here is the neck of the humerus. And then, of course, we know about the shaft or the diaphysis. As we move to the bottom, what you see here are a series of condyles. So this is the medial condyle. The medial epicondyle. This is the lateral epicondyle over here. This big knobby guy is called the capitulum. And this guy that looks kind of like a bow tie is called the trochlea. So we have the trochlea and the capitulum. And then this little tiny fossa is called the coronoid fossa, okay? And this is where the coronoid process on the humerus articulates. When we flip it over to the posterior side, we can only see the trochlea. That's another tip off. You can kind of see a little bit of the capitulum here, but we have the lateral epicondyle, the medial epicondyle, and then the olecranon fossa, okay? So again, it's good to orientate left versus right, and then always remember that this little thumb process is always pointing medial. So we have the medial epicondyle, the coronoid fossa, the trochlea, the capitulum, the lateral epicondyle, and then when we flip it over onto the posterior side, we have the trochlea, the olecranon fossa, the medial epicondyle, the lateral epicondyle. Then we have the shaft or diaphysis. And then when we move towards the head, we find the groove. We know this is the head of the humerus. The lateral bump is the greater tubercle. The intertubercle groove is in the middle, and then we have the lesser tubercle over here, and then we have the neck of the humerus right where it starts to widen.